People often imagine the advocate of freedom as the rugged individualist, a person obsessed with self sufficiency and independence. But that stereotype really contains very little truth. Freedom may allow for self sufficiency, but the true isolationist has little concern for the norms of society. If one intends to live apart from civilization, then the moral structure of society becomes irrelevant. The rest of us, however, are deeply concerned with social norms because libertarianism begins with the recognition that the social norms of property, exchange, trust, money, and cooperation are not artificial creations of the state. They are naturally occurring features of human civilization. And just as importantly, we hope that the norm of statism, which is the norm of legalizing predation, is eventually abandoned. So, the libertarian isn't an isolationist, but a proponent of emergent social order. From the social perspective, that's the real tragedy of having a government. We have been denied the opportunity to see what a truly voluntary civilization might actually become. What would life look like if people were allowed to trade in peace? For decades, people assumed political crises would eventually weaken the system that prevents peaceful trade. Corruption scandals, illegal wars, economic failures, lockdowns, inflation. Surely at some point, public trust would collapse enough to produce real change. But something strange keeps happening. Legitimacy falls, yet dependency remains. And as I said, I believe these are the two pillars that hold up the state. I'm personally comfortable now saying I believe counter economics is the only way forward. No possible election result will be enough in the long run. I don't believe in revolution or in seizing power to replace one ruling class with another. Instead, the goal is to reduce dependency by rebuilding the capacities society once possessed outside the state. I think that's how we get to anarchy, the hard way, the long way. We have to do the dirty work of actually building things. We must practice what we preach and realize the solution will not come from policy. And when I think about what that actually looks like in practice, I tend to think of five broad areas where ordinary people can begin rebuilding independence and strong community outside centralized systems. The first is economic independence. Small businesses, local trade, peer to peer markets, independent production, and crypto, and alternate payment methods. The point isn't to isolate ourselves from society, it is to create stronger and more local economic relationships that don't leave people completely dependent on political institutions during moments of crisis. The second is educational independence, homeschooling, microschooling, online learning, and most important, in my opinion, apprenticeships. A healthy society shouldn't depend entirely on centralized bureaucracies to pass on knowledge, values, and practical skills to the next generation. The third is social resilience, mutual aid societies, local communities, churches, clubs, and other private associations. Historically, civil society itself provided much of the support structure that people now look to government for. Rebuilding these local bonds is essential if people are ever going to feel secure outside centralized dependency. The fourth is information independence, independent media, and decentralized communication, including self-hosted platforms. A free society requires the ability to communicate, organize, and exchange ideas without every major avenue being filtered through centralized gatekeepers. And finally, physical resilience. Local food systems, skilled trades, repair culture, and distributed infrastructure. A society becomes fragile when people lose the ability to provide basic necessities except through systems they neither understand nor control. Most importantly, none of this is about chaos or tearing society apart. In many ways, it's the opposite. It's about rebuilding the social capacity that governments gradually absorbed over time, so that ordinary families and communities become less politically fragile. Because the next time there's a major crisis of legitimacy, whether it's inflation, corruption, economic collapse, censorship, or another political disaster, people will have the power to walk away.